Welcome to the thrilling world of the flying runner, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hey there, everyone. It's Tony here, and welcome to episode 72 of the Flying Runner podcast. We have a very informal show tonight. We do not have Tim's run sheet, and we are going to run blind a little bit because we're all still on a high of what has happened over the last probably 2-3 weeks. So we've got a big show. We're going to talk about lots and lots of things. Let's welcome in my co-hosts. Of course, we've got Lucia Banco from Sydney, who's going to talk all things very soon about the amazing news we had about the Sydney Marathon while we were away. But of course, sitting there, and Tim, for those on video, has got his 6-star medal around his neck. I believe Tara's is still a little bit wet from the tears that she cried at the tent. Maybe trying to rust proof that thing. I don't know. But congratulations, Tim and Tara, on becoming the latest 6-star medalist here in Australia. Well done.
Excellent. Yeah, we're very excited about that one, aren't we, Tim? So
yeah. very, very excited. It was a fantastic experience to go through what happened in New York for us, and to do the last of the 6. It was just fantastic. We'll talk about the details a bit later on that, but receiving those medals at the end were very emotional. I know, Tara, you were crying. We've posted that up on the Team Ellis page. I was even crying a little bit there, a little bit weepy, but very emotional experience when you take these races on. I think, Tara, you said it, you're more emotional than after completing your first marathon, and we've done 18 of them now, so it was pretty full on.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
it is. It's a really surreal feeling, actually. Like all those things that, I mean, you guys already know what we're going through, Tony and Lucia, but everything that you've sort of trained for, all those early morning get-ups and all of that sort of stuff, the Sunday morning runs and everything like that, it's like, oh, I'm finally finished what I'm set out to do. And now it's like, oh, I can take that pressure off a little bit. So not that I had a lot of pressure anyway, but you know what I mean? It's,
Yeah, I had to laugh a little bit because in the live that you did from New York in Central Park with your medals, you were talking about the last mile, and you were talking about the things that you were, the very emotional to you, very indebted to you, and your family and the people that have supported you through the whole journey. And I'm thinking, isn't that wonderful? Because all I was happening in the last kilometre that Sharon and I did at Tokyo was her telling me where to go and where to put things.
Yeah, no, it was very emotional for us. That last mile we dedicated to our children. They've missed out on all the trips. We've made all the trips alone without our children. They are adult children too, by the way. But they've missed a lot of time with us while we've been training, while we've been traveling. They've seen the highs, they've seen the lows when we come back from training, and we're just totally wiped out. It was very emotional for us, that last mile. There is a sign, as you know, when you come into Central Park, 1 mile to go. And basically from that moment, the tears started welling. We knew you were going to get it. And it just became more and more emotional the closer we got to the finish line, didn't it, Tara?
It sure did. Look, I mean, it was a bit of an emotional day. I just recently lost my grandmother, and it was her birthday on the day of the marathon as well. So the first 25 miles was actually dedicated in my heart to her because she passed away in September. So just before we went to America for the Chicago Marathon. So that being on her birthday was very, very special to me. But yeah, with the kids, we dedicated that last mile to them. And they've been our biggest supporters for a very, very long time. And it's good to see we influence them a lot in what we do. As you know, our son runs half marathons now. But it's nice to be able to think about, why we're doing what we're doing, and that was our why. So yeah,
very, very, very nice, and it was heartwarming to read and hear that. So we've got a little bit of news that we just will talk about before I'm going to hand over to our good friend Lucia, who's going to run the gauntlet of this informal no run sheet sort of a podcast thing that we're doing tonight. But I'm going to hand it over to Tim, because the first bit of news is something that has been coming for a while, I would suggest. So over to you, Tim.
All right. All right. Yeah. So the first bit of news is in New York at the New York Marathon. A YouTube influencer by the name of Matt Choi. He's got something like 500,000 Instagram followers and 500,000 YouTube followers, and he's very well known. If you don't know of him, you've probably seen videos of him. He's a Korean American who is very brash, very forward, out there, spoken. Generally runs without a shirt on, and is always looking to run fast. And unfortunately, in New York, he made a decision to run with a film crew on a e-bike that was two e-bikes that were following him during the race. And complaints were made that those e-bikes were preventing other runners from being able to pass in some of the tighter areas on the course, as well as being able to access some of the drink stations. So New York road runners who owned the race and who managed the race reviewed the footage, had a look at the situation, and reviewed their rules and have provided an outcome or a solution to it. In which case, Matt has now been disqualified from the New York Marathon that we ran in, the 2024 version. In addition to that, he has also been disqualified from all future New York Roadrunner road events going forward for the rest of his lifetime. It's a harsh ban. It's a full ban, but listening to Matt Choi and listening to his videos that he's posted out about it, he accepts full blame for it. He accepts that he put himself before all the other runners out there on the course. He accepts that the decision was his to create the content and to use the bikes on the course. And when you mentioned, Tony, it's been coming for a little while. It's not the first time he's been out on courses before with e-bikes filming himself. It's just that he hasn't been pulled up. And I say in this instance, in such a big race, 55,000 runners, he's been caught out, and New York road runners have thrown the book at him. The good news is he's not going to protest it. He's accepted the outcome. But it is a bit silly. This is the world we're in, where we have influencers and Instagram stars and social media and people out there who are more interested in putting content out there. And I did read somewhere where he said, I'm not really a runner. I don't like running. I just create content, and this is what pays the bills.
Yeah.
And he saw that what he was doing was more about creating content rather than running a sub 3 hour marathon, which was what he was doing at the time.
Yeah,
so
he ran a 2:57, which is a pretty awesome time. And Tim, I had read that it's not the first time he's been in trouble, because he ran with somebody else's bib at one of the other major marathons. Yeah, Houston.
Yeah.
And got in trouble for that. Heartfelt apology at the end of that as well. So it seems that he's very, very good with heartfelt apologies after he's been caught. But that hasn't necessarily changed the behavior. And without putting you on the spot, I know that the social media circus has been really divided on this. And some people are incredibly happy that he's been caught and that, the ban is in effect. And then there's the other side of the coin, the ones that probably don't believe he did anything wrong. So, and I suppose, once again, that's just representative of the world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is interesting. I was watching Kafuzi's video that he put out on the weekend. He always does a runner's weekend video, and I watched that this morning. And normally he would have in there videos of him meeting up with Matt Choi and others, and he had a number of other runners that he caught up with. But whether it was deliberate or whether it had been edited out, he didn't have any content in there relating to Matt. Normally, him and Matt do catch up at these sort of events. So I wonder if some of the other influencers are now starting to distance themselves. I'm not saying the other influencers are bad like that. They're not out there with bikes on the course. Somebody like Kafuzi runs with the selfie stick, generally runs within the rules of the race that he's running in. But yeah, to put 2 e-bikes on a course with 55,000 runners, it was always going to be problematic, and it was always going to lead to issues, particularly somebody as high profile as Matt.
Yeah, very much so. Hey, the next piece of news, and it's only just come to me, was I read today that our good friend and a good friend of the podcast, Elliot Kipchoge, is running is coming
10K.
a 10K in, is it Thailand?
Thailand, yes. He has a commercial agreement with the Thailand government, not to run races, but it's more from a humanity point of view. And he's decided that he will go to Thailand to look at the 10K and to run the 10K. Now, whether or not he's going for a fast time or he's just going to jog at the back of the pack or in the middle of the pack and make people happy, no one really knows at this stage. But yes, he signed up for a 10K event in Thailand.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now then, hey, Lucia, over to you, because you've got the next piece of news. So while we're in New York on a Marathon Sunday, there was a very small, minor announcement that was made around a marathon here in Australia.
Just a very tiny announcement, but I think probably one of the worst kept secrets in the running community. But it's official. The Sydney TCS Marathon, presented by ASICS, is officially a world major marathon. It's the 7th one in the series. So it's very, very exciting indeed. I was down at the Opera House Monday morning because Channel 9, they had the tourism minister down there and they did a crossover to New York. So there was a bunch of people from all different run clubs there. Yeah, as I said, one of the worst kept secrets ever, because the email came out, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning our time, and the announcement wasn't meant to happen till about 7 o'clock our time. So it's like, well, there it goes. The only thing that was kind of in question was what date was it going to be. If it was the normal weekend, normally the marathon's been held the middle weekend of September, and that would have been the weekend before Belly. But what they've done is they've brought it forward, so it's the 31st of August. So it's the last Sunday in August, which makes it about 2 weeks after the City to Surf. So so it's very exciting times indeed. So I was fortunate enough on Saturday, even went the Sydney Marathon team had a special run club event to kind of celebrate being awarded the 7th major. So there was Wayne Larden, the race. He is the race director. He was there, and the ambassadors, Nick and Ben, and a whole bunch of other guys, and James as well from the team. So just talking about it all. And one thing that has been a point of contention, when the email came out to announce Sydney's the 7th major, for people who were part of the candidacy club, which are those who ran it in 22, 23, or 24, an email was meant to come out on the Monday to indicate which year you would want to prefer to do it, because being part of the candidacy club, you get one spot which is valid over the next 3 years, so either 25, 26, or 27. So an email wasn't meant to be coming out for us to indicate what year you would like to do that. So that email hasn't come out yet, but insider information, apparently the email is coming out this week. An email is coming out this week to indicate what year people would like to do it. Then there's going to be a ballot for the candidacy club, which will be open from Tuesday the 26th November until Monday the 2nd. One moment. And then it's going to be, and then if you don't get into the ballot of the candidacy club, there's going to be a general ballot, which will open mid-December.
Mm.
So when you say ballot, Lucia, does that mean just because you've run it doesn't mean you're guaranteed the year you pick?
No,
Yeah.
So if you don't get your year, do you then miss out, or do you then need to
No.
book another year?
No, so basically, let's say, for instance, if I put in first preference is 25 and then 26, if I don't get it in 25, I believe you go into the general ballots, but then I think you go into the candidacy ballot the following year. So one spot is guaranteed over the next 3 years. It's just not sure which one, because then there's also talk that they may expand the entry field to about 35,000.
Yeah,
people.
I've heard 37 is the goal for the race, 37,000, and if your first choice isn't can't fit in with the field, your second choice is pretty much guaranteed. So so it's going to be amazing.
And then also, sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, sorry. You're good. Keep talking. Sorry.
And there's some of us, we were saying on Saturday, because there would have been thousands of people who came out for the World Age Championships, and they were awarded a provisional star. And so now Sydney is a major. They'll have that 7th star already. So really, that could potentially open up thousands of spots if those people don't come out.
Mm.
So yeah, it's going to be very interesting times, but very, very, very exciting times, because not only does it put Sydney running on the map, but it does put Australia running on the map. And they're saying that the economic benefit for Sydney alone over the next 10 years will be about 300 million, but that's not even taking into account the economic benefit to the rest of the country as well.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Tony. Yep.
Yeah, and I think
interrupting
that's all right. We keep interrupting you, Tara. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I know the answer to this, but Tony, you might be able to answer this better, or Tim or Lucia. With the 6 stars that will still remain as 6 stars, it now becomes a 9-star medal, and the next 3 are in their own separate group. Does anybody want to expand on that one for me, or?
I think,
or have I just explained it pretty much how it is?
I can extend it. So the current 6-star medal stays the same for the next little while. So even if you run Sydney, you're not going to get a 7th star added onto the medal. No. You'll get a 7th star added into your profile on the Abbott's World Marathon Majors app that you use online, right? What they're talking about is over the next 3-4 years, they're going to add a new World Major Marathon every year. So next year it will be Sydney. Potentially the year after that, it will be Cape Town. And then potentially the year after that, it will be Shanghai. Cape Town and Shanghai are the 2 remaining candidacy races that are out there. And what they've said is that once they get to 9, they'll then change this medal to be a 9-star medal, but they'll still keep the 6-star medal for people who only want to do the 6-star. And then if you want to go and do the additional 3, then there'll be a 9-star medal as well. That's what they've said so far.
Yeah, which is weird, because you're either a major or you're not. And I understand the sentiment around keeping the 6-star, but you're fundamentally saying, well, they're the real majors, and then these are the next level majors. Then if you do them, we'll give you a 9-star. So
and it will sort itself out once they get all 9 up and there's a 9-star medal, because I don't get the concept of why you would only then have a 6-star and go for 6, but not go for the other 3 to get the 9-star. So I suspect that they will get rid of the 6-star medal at some stage in the future, and it will just be only a 9-star medal rather than, 2 medals.
Yeah. It's going to be a very, very interesting scenario moving forward. But the thing that I wanted to talk about is they're talking about Sydney being a spring marathon, and it really confused some of our colleagues in America, because the spring catalogs are at the beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden we've got this lone thing just before the fall marathons called the spring catalog. Yeah. So anyway, it was a little bit of humour that I saw, because they were really struggling to get their heads around how can it be a spring marathon when it's in August.
So I think for us, we need to we need to, as a country, or we need to, as a city in Sydney, come up with a way to increase crowd support over the next couple of years. And I know they've done a good job over the past couple of years to get the crowds up there, but they're nothing like the rest of the majors, and that's something Sydney really has to work on now. Is not necessarily the numbers. The numbers will grow. The participant numbers will grow. It's more about how do we get the crowds, and how do we spread them out sufficiently around the course that there aren't any dead spots where there's no support at all.
Yeah. And now that there's a lot of belief that now it's a major, those crowds will naturally happen, but there's got to be a lot of work put into it. So for people of Sydney to actually understand, and I still believe you need to have the Hoodoo Gurus down there in Centennial Park. But all right.
Sydney doesn't even turn up to a State of Origin game and sell out the stadiums. So if they can't do that, how can they turn up to a World Marathon major?
Yeah. All righty. Hey, yeah. Now, before we move on to Lucia's component, I do need to talk about the number that Tim and Tara have now as Australian 6-star medalists. And by my research, there were 13 Australians added to the 6-star list from New York.
Is that all?
Yep.
So, and so much so that I'm going to congratulate and name each and every one of them. So, and in order of their time that they did the race in. So, David Hartley did it in 2:52 and 43 seconds. Giles Brown, 3 hours and 51 seconds. Kieran O'Connor did it in 3:10:45. Sarah Watts, 3:13:10. Candice O'Neill, 3:16:42. Adrian, I'm going to get your last name horribly wrong. Adrian Achuthan, 3:31:16. Andrew Costello, that's an easy one for me, 3:36. Vic Correa, a friend of ours through Traveling Fit, 4:32:45. Zhu Quan Lao, 5:17:36. Carol Adams, another friend of the podcast and Traveling Fit, 5:31:54. Abigail Hurdley at 5:35:42. And then Tim and Tara Ellis, 5:38:05. So making you the 12th and 13th fastest on the day. And which means that, and because of the equal time there, we've got to go alphabetical order. So Tara, you are number 476 Australian to have the 6-star medal. Tim, you are 477th with the 6-star medal Aussie. From a gender point of view, Tara, you are 205 female, and Tim, you are 272 male. So congratulations, guys. You've joined the club, and you got in under that 500 mark. So well done.
Can we just call it an average number, 476.5? We'll just take both.
We'll go with that. It has been a team effort, so
an amazing team effort.
I'm happy to give it to Tara. Yep.
And with that, I'm going to hand over to Lucia.
Thank you, Tony. So what I thought I'd do is, obviously, Team Ellis have had an amazing 4-week trip. So if you guys...
4 week. Yeah, 4 week. 4 week.
So what I'm thinking is maybe for the first couple of minutes, if you guys can give an overview of Chicago and then Niagara, and then I'll bring Tony back into it and ask you guys a series of questions about New York. So Tara or Tim, over to you guys to talk about the first 2 races of the trip.
Tim, you can start with Chicago and I'll do Niagara.
All right. So Chicago starts off with the expo, and I've got to say it is probably up there with the biggest and best expo of the 6 majors that we've been to. We spent probably a good 4 hours there on day one. We arrived right on opening time on day one of the expo. We saw the opening ceremony. Now, we have an expo that has an opening ceremony.
Wow.
It had media presentation there. It had people, that were being introduced to the crowd that were former winners of the race, as well as their streakers that have streaked for so many years. It was a big deal, the opening ceremony, but I have to admit that lived up to everything you would want to see in a major expo. It had all the players there with all their gear, and I can't really fault that expo. So lots of free samples. The bio-free zone, we talked about that a few weeks ago before we went over. Tara, I don't know how many samples of bio-freeze we grabbed, but we kept going past and grabbing samples, and then we lined up and grabbed more samples, and then grabbed more samples on the way out. But yeah, we love.
And how
love
good
that
was
product.
the bib pickup? Like we went through, we displayed our, and this is probably the most efficient bib collection I've ever been through for any marathon. So you went in, as you went to pick up your bib, you would go through a counter first, give them your name, your ID, and instead of giving the ID when you pick up your bib, you actually just give your ID there, and they say, "Yep, go to counter 3." You go to counter 3, and they've already got the bib ready for you and everything like that. So it's just very seamless. It worked really, really well for us, didn't it, Tim?
Yeah. It was really good. So that was day one on the Thursday or Friday or whenever it was, and then we did the bobble hat run on the 5K Saturday run, which was awesome. We love the bobble hat run. It was a little bit warm this year, so there weren't that many people wearing their bobble hats. We chose to wear it, but we enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun running right through the city or the downtown area of Chicago, through all the historical parts, and it was just fantastic. It was a really
And who
good
did
way
we
to.
run into on the bobble hat run, Tim?
I was about to say we ran into Hayden Habib, who is from one of our earlier episodes from 40 Runs Club in the UK. So we finally got to meet him in person, in the flesh, and his lovely wife Marissa, and a number of the other 40 runners that were there as well, including one lady who's a 40 runner whose mum, I think she said, listens to the podcast up in Townsville. So it was just pretty awesome having these people come up and recognize who we were and have a chat to us as we're running about the podcast. So sorry, I've forgotten your name because it was a number of weeks ago, but to your mum that listens to us, hello. But yeah, that was a great little run. Love that. And there was a good opener up to the marathon on the Sunday, which we loved. We loved every moment of that marathon. You start in Grant Park and you do this giant sort of loop around the city and come back to Grant Park to finish in Grant Park. Fairly flat course most of the way. There's a few ups and downs over the bridges. Yes, they are cheese graters when you run over those bridges if you don't run on the carpet. But they were really well organized event. Drink stations were perfect. They were at the right sort of distances every sort of 2 miles or so. Crowd support was just phenomenal the whole way. It's not up there with New York on the crowd support, but I would put it up there on par with probably London or a little bit less than London. Very good coverage across the course. And I think when we got into Little Mexico, it was just loud as. There were just, guys DJing, there was live bands, there was just constant music every 100 meters or so. There was another band, there was another DJ, there was another person on a microphone yelling and screaming, and there was just 2, 3, 4 people deep for blocks. I don't know, probably 15 blocks as we ran through Little Mexico there. So we really loved that course. We really had a good time. We ran it in about 5 hours 31. But yeah, highly recommend Chicago as an event. I guess we were lucky and fortunate. We got really good weather on the day. People talked about a headwind that we were running into over that last bit as you run back towards Grant Park, up that last straight before you turn right and then left. But we didn't really notice it. We just found our sort of second wind over those last 5-6 kilometers and just hammered it home and really enjoyed ourselves. The hill at the end, yes, it's a hill. It is a hill. I think we ran about half to 3/4 of it up the hill before we walked the last little bit, but then we got to the top and the adrenaline kicked in, and we ran the last 250 meters or whatever it is from the top of the hill down to the finish line, and it was just awesome. Post race, you get donuts, you get beer, you get muscle milk, you get bananas, you get fruit, you get the whole lot. It was fantastic. Can't fault Chicago in any way. It was probably, it's hard. I don't like rating the courses, which one's better than which one, but it would be up there with some of the top of the majors, as far as participation goes, as far as the course goes, as far as the organization goes, as far as the atmosphere goes. It would be up there with London, New York, as far as those sort of elements go.
Now, Tim, how good was the
Yep.
beer after the finish?
The Goose Island beer was fantastic. It was a very nice little drop at the end there. The only downside was that you only get one, and you have to drink it in the park. So you can't even walk and drink it back to the hotel, which would have been nice to keep walking. So we had to sit down, drink the beer in our space blankets, and before we could walk out of the park area. But that's okay. That's their rules. We did it, no problems. It gave us time just to sit down and chill for 5 minutes while we had our beer and just take in what we'd done before we got up and walked back. But yeah, the beer was fantastic.
Excellent. Now,
and those little donuts. I can't remember the name of them, the company, but I love those little donuts. Stan's Donuts. That's it. And we got a heap of them at the 5K run, and then we got a heap of them afterwards. They're only little donuts, but they're very nice after a run. I can tell you that.
I don't remember getting donuts after the 5K.
Yeah.
Or
Donuts is something new for me too. So.
Yeah, Stan's, which is a famous Chicago donut brand. That's what we got, Stan's Donuts, and they're only mini ones, only literally that sort of size. Finger and thumb together.
Chocolate coating or something over
them.
Yeah,
chocolate topped one. Yeah, and I probably had downed about 7 or 8 of them after the race. It was great.
You're allowed to.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but no, really well organised. Love the event. Love the city. We can't fault it. Now, it would be a different race if all of a sudden Chicago lived up to its name as the Windy City. It would be a different race if it was a lot colder or cooler. But for us, we had a great time. And fueling tip beforehand, the day before the race, we went down to the beef restaurant. And I don't know if anyone of our listeners is a watcher of The Bear on Disney Plus. It's a cooking show on Disney Plus where they talk about this restaurant and how it operates and the people behind it. It's actually based on this restaurant that we went to called the Beef, and they do really good beef sandwiches or beef rolls, as we'd call them back here, and they were fantastic to fuel with the day beforehand. So highly recommend go to the Beef the day beforehand.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that recap about the Windy City Marathon. Now, Tara, as the ambassador of the Niagara Falls, if you could give us an overview of the weekend and the race.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Niagara Falls was absolutely stunning. I highly rate Niagara Falls. Again, we were very fortunate. We had beautiful weather. It was a little bit chilly at the start, but hey, I'd rather have it cooler than hot. So they've just been taken over by a new organisation. So this is the first year that they've actually had this group running them, I believe. So there wasn't a lot of merchandise at the expo. It is a smaller race. I think there's only about 7,000 people that enter. That's for the 5K, 10K, half.
4,000.
4,000. Sorry, 4,000. So that's for the half marathon, full marathon, 5K and 10K. So it is a smaller event at the moment. And it used to actually be bigger than Chicago Marathon when it first originally started, but with COVID and everything like that, it's had to pull itself back a bit. It is going to turn back into an international marathon in either next year or the year after, where they run across the border back into Canada, Canada into the United States. But at the moment, it's just on the Canadian side. But we started, and it was so the expo, easy pickup, not a lot of merch or anything, but I do have a beautiful shirt to wear. But we started the race. It must have been about 8 o'clock, was it, Tim? Oh, 7:45. 7:45. It was 0 degrees when we started. So sounds awful, but once you discard your layers and you run for 3Ks, your hands start warming up and you defrost a little bit, you're okay. And you run out 3Ks from the start line down towards the Niagara Falls where the Horseshoe Falls is. And then you turn around there and come back 3K. So you're running past the main Niagara Falls area for 6Ks or so. Then after that, you come back to the start line and you run out
upstream of the Niagara River.
Upstream, yeah. And you're watching the Niagara River the whole entire time. There's not a lot of support on the course once you pass the actual, when you're at the falls area, yes, there is. But when you're running out towards the other end, there isn't. But you don't need that support. There's a lot of scenery that you just are so blown away by. You just are enjoying it. Beautiful houses, great views. And we were lucky with the weather. So they had great hydration on course and fueling. They gave out gels and stuff as well. So, but yeah, no, it was a beautiful course. We did, I think, 2 hours 30 or something. Was it, Tim?
2:26.
2:26. So there's a few undulations in the course, not overly hilly, probably like Chicago. The first bit of it is the most hilliest part, then the rest of it goes flat. But yeah, wonderful, like wonderful volunteers, wonderful scenery, just a really, really nice event. Nice medal at the end. So anybody that wants to do Niagara Falls, highly recommend it.
I've never run in a marathon or a half marathon before or any other event where you look out and there's a river and you look on the other side of the river and it's a different country. And it was a bit different that way. It was a bit different having Tara sort of under-described the first 6Ks, but for the first 3Ks down to the falls, all you see is the mist coming off the falls in front of you, and you just hear the roar of the falls. And as you get closer and closer to the falls, it gets louder and louder. So there's this general vibe in the race amongst the participants because everyone's excited about getting to the falls, and it was really special. It was a really good race. And scenery wise, it's probably the most spectacular race as far as scenery goes. It's probably up there with Uluru and the Outback Marathon for us.
And Queenstown.
And Queenstown Marathon with just spectacular scenery.
Excellent, guys. Tara, and from what you could tell, was it mainly in terms of the types of nationalities running, was it mainly Canadians or was it a mix of internationals?
I didn't hear any other Australian accents, but I wasn't actually looking. There was mostly Americans and Canadians that were there.
East Coast Americans.
Yeah, so we actually went to parkrun the day before at a Welland Canal parkrun, and it's a beautiful parkrun. And we met up with some really lovely American ladies who were running the marathon and half marathon. But it was mostly Canadians and Americans, but highly recommend it to anybody who, if they're going over for New York Marathon or Chicago Marathon or just, want something in between or just want to try something different. Definitely recommend it.
Oh, excellent. Well done, guys, because I was very envious of all the photos and videos, but I must admit, when I saw the photos of the Niagara Falls one, you guys did look freezing wearing the long sleeve tops. So even though the scenery may have been gorgeous, but I'm like, oh, I bet you guys were happy once it was done.
It was so weird because I only ever run in a singlet no matter what the weather is. And the night before I said to Tim, I'm just going to wear a singlet. And Tim goes, let me just check. Because we'd had beautiful weather. It was quite warm. He goes, no, I think tomorrow's supposed to drop in the temperatures. I said, oh, can't be that cold. And we looked at and I said 2 degrees or something. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just wear a long sleeve underneath and then I can strip it off if I need to. Yeah, there was no way that was ever going to come off. And I've never run in a long sleeve top. So it was a little bit weird for me. But yeah, it was nice.
And the local Canadians have all got the proper cold weather gear. So they've got, the gloves, they've got the long sleeves pants, they've got the long sleeve shirt, they've got the
Earmuff
overshirt,
things.
they've got the earmuff things, they've got the beanies on, they've got the long pants, and it's just like we don't own any of that stuff. We just don't run in it. So quite different.
Well done,
Yeah.
guys.
And Lucia, I just wanted to make a comment because while we were flying as a duo, while these two were having fun around the world, I think one of the calls you made when we talked about Niagara and we talked about the Detroit Free Press Marathon, which is an international marathon, goes across borders. The call that you made was that you could do the Detroit Marathon, which was 2 weeks before New York, back it up and do the Niagara Marathon, and then make it a 3-week trip and do New York, which I'm looking and hearing about. All of those marathons would be an ideal running trip. So it sounds exciting. So for any listeners out there that get excited about Niagara, go and check out the Detroit Free Press Marathon and then back it up and get to New York. So 3 weeks in a row. I'll leave it to you.
It's funny you say that though, Tony, because we were in Washington the week before we went into Niagara, and they actually have the Marine Corps Marathon on the same weekend as Niagara. And we're sitting there going, oh, wish we had stuck around and done that. Like we were like, oh, we didn't know or whatever. Definitely do not regret not doing that one. We're so glad we did Niagara rather than Marine Corps. So Marine Corps might be a huge marathon, but Niagara's definitely got it as a,
Go have a look at it on our Team Ellis Running YouTube channel. The video that we've put together, it is just a stunning video. I think I'm jealous because I'm not jealous, but I'm boasting because we put it together. Biased, but it is definitely, everyone that's commented on it has said it's just a stunning location. So
well done, guys. Amazing achievement. Now, what I want to move on to now is probably one of my favourite races, and what I think I've decided will be my victory lap, is the good old New York Marathon. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of it, I've got to ask, who came home with the Dunkin' Donuts beanie?
Yep, I think we all did.
All of us did.
Good
It
work.
was a thinner beanie than previous years, so it was more like a summer beanie. So it was easier to stash down your pants.
And I'm going to do a massive shout out to one of our marathon mates, Kai. God bless him. He knew how much I wanted one. He took one and he ran with it, and he's going to give it to me when I see him early next year. So Kai, shout out to you. Meant the absolute world to me that he did that.
I think he made a comment to the Marathon Mates group through the podcast that he certainly was going to do that, Lucia. So it was part of his plan, and well done to Kai. And I think he ran in a pretty amazing time for New York too, just quietly. I
think it's about 3:15, 3:13, 3:15.
Oh,
and he would have run much faster if he wasn't carrying an extra beanie.
Yeah, just imagine that impediment that he did for you, Lucia. What a great friend. So well done,
I hope you feel guilty.
He's an absolutely amazing guy. So I know he had an absolute blast. So what I thought I'd do now is I'm going to throw a couple of questions out to you guys, and then if you guys just want to take turns in answering them. So first one, what was the highlight for you all about New York? Whether it was the expo, the opening ceremony, what was the highlight? Tony?
Just being there for us. It was just awesome. New York has just brought back lots and lots of memories. It was a challenging race day for Sharon and I. I won't hold back on that. It was a challenging day for us. But at the end of the day, we were so excited for Kay Mass ran her first major. Tim and Tara picked up their 6-star. Carol Adams picked up her 6-star. There were so many positives that overshadowed the really bad day. But just being there, the expo was awesome. It's my favorite expo by far. Getting that first at the starting line and hearing Frankie, and then going over the bridge, or in our case under the bridge, is just one of the most iconic starts in world majors or world marathons. So it was lots of highlights, but just being there and just getting the sense of being part of the New York City Marathon again was probably the biggest highlight for me.
Awesome. Tara?
Oh, gee.
Sorry, question. Did you pat any dogs on course?
No. You spotted
No,
it, but you didn't touch it.
I was a little bit paranoid after Boston that if something went wrong, that I may not have the time to make it up. So I did look at them, but I did not stop and pat them. But I think my highlight, Frank Sinatra at the start, singing New York, New York, obviously. Just that whole vibe as you're in that starting corral when you're walking up, and we went over the bridge, and when I found out that I was going over the bridge, I was actually probably the only person that wanted to go under the bridge, and that was only because I didn't want the hill, because going over the bridge you get more of a hill. So I think I was the only person that actually wanted to go under the bridge and went over, and I'm like, oh, but I wanted to go under. Didn't even notice a hill. I was so hyped up, I just didn't even notice that there was a hill there. Like, we were just having so much fun, just enjoying every moment of it, weren't we, Tim? It was fantastic. When we were getting into Brooklyn, all those Brooklyn accents, the police officers taking photos. I did take photos with the police officers because that's what I do on these marathons. The SWAT teams in Chicago, I did it, and I did it in Boston. I do it in all the majors. But yeah, no, we had a lot of fun. We were dancing and having fun with everybody. We did have a bit of an issue with the camera. Tim accidentally hit the record button on the bus on the way out there. So we recorded the bus ride to Staten Island from Manhattan. However, there was no footage then available for the actual race. So everything was done on phone, so it might be a little bit shaky when Tim finally gets around to actually doing that one up. But no, amazing race. The crowds, there's police line where they're supposed to stay behind, and nobody does. And you've got like this little narrow path that you're sort of trying to dodge people giving you high fives. And I don't think I heard Tim the whole entire race. We couldn't even hear each other, could we, Tim? It was just so loud. It was amazing. Just loved every minute of it. Tim had a beer at mile 14, I think it was.
Yeah. Why not? I didn't have a whole beer. I had a mouthful.
I declined on that one, given my Boston history of drinking stuff on course that didn't agree with me. So, but in all honesty, my highlight, as I said earlier in the podcast, that marathon was dedicated to my grandmother. And then that last mile got really, really emotional for me. And I could feel the overwhelming feeling in my chest of what my why was. And thinking about why am I doing this? How am I doing this? And crossing that finish line was so emotional. I think I started crying probably about 500 meters before the finish line, and and then I sort of composed myself, got my real medal, like the New York medal, around my neck, and then got to the Abbott's tent, and everyone was clapping and cheering for us, and I just broke down, and just tears of happiness. There was a lot of work that went into it from Tim and I's perspective, and there was probably a month or so ago, I wasn't even sure I'd be at that point. So I'm so grateful that I was able to get there. Yeah. But that getting that Abbott 6-star medal around my neck was definitely the highlight of New York for me.
And Tim?
The hills. I love running the hills. No. I actually didn't mind the course. The course was fantastic, but the thing I loved most about it was the 5 boroughs that you run through. You start at Staten Island, you cross over the Verrazano Narrows Bridge into Brooklyn, and is it 4th Avenue? It's just one long dead straight avenue for probably 10 kilometers that you just run along through Brooklyn before you go up and in over the little bridge into Queens. And then every borough you run through has a different vibe about it. Brooklyn is very Brooklyn. Queens is very different to Brooklyn. And then you come over the Queensboro Bridge down into First Avenue on Manhattan and run along there for probably another, I don't know, 6 or 7 kilometers, dead straight along there. And that's a Scream Tunnel. We talk about the Scream Tunnel at Boston. That's nothing compared to what we had. As Tara said, the crowds really pushed in from the gutters. They were probably leaving, when we ran through it, probably an alley of maybe 4 or 5 meters wide. And really pushed us right in there, and we couldn't hear each other, we couldn't talk, but it was just this feel you got of people trying to push you along and get through that section. And for us, that's always a challenging section, 25 to 30 Ks. It plays with us mentally, and it sort of helped us push along a little bit. And then from there up into the Bronx, over the bridge, over the Harlem River into the Bronx. And then it's only a short stint in the Bronx. You're not in the Bronx for very long. You sort of go up and do a bit of a U-turn and then come back down, back over into Manhattan through Harlem. And then, there's that long hill at about 37 kilometers, and it goes for about 1.5 kilometers nonstop straight up. And the thing that I was most happiest about was that Tara was able to run that entire hill nonstop, didn't stop, didn't walk. Got her up that hill while passing people as we're getting up there, because we could sense that we're getting closer and closer to that entry into Central Park. And pretty much you get to the top of the hill, and not far after that you do turn right and then do a section through Central Park before coming back out onto 59th Street. Go along there for about 300 or 400 meters before then turning in at Columbus Circle into the park again for the final time for the last sort of 600-700 meters. And you can't beat that course. You're running 5 boroughs. You're running running through these areas that us outsiders from New York only hear about in movies and TV shows. And here we are running those areas. And I think for me, that was the biggest thing on the day, the biggest thrill for me. Getting the medals at the end was the big thrill, but actually saying that we've run all 5 boroughs, when you see it on a map and you look at a map of Manhattan or New York City and you see the 5 boroughs and you see how far it is when you're on that bridge, how far away Manhattan is when you're on top of that bridge, and you look out and the Statue of Liberty's over there and she's very small, and she's at the bottom of Manhattan, and you look at Manhattan itself and you go, well, Central Park's in the middle of that, and we got a long way to go, but it was a fantastic run through all those boroughs to experience it all. Loved every moment.
Excellent. One thing that I love that New York does, which none of the other majors do, is the opening ceremony. So Team Else were quite lucky to actually be part of it. So if I can get you guys in a few words and to describe the vibe and the feel of the opening ceremony. Tony?
Yeah, look.
We were just there to support the opening ceremony. I thought it was pretty cool. It's very unique. It was clearly that the Australians didn't organise their national outfit, because we're in jeans and t-shirts, and then quickly followed by the Brazilians, which was just colour and a drum band that followed them, and I'm thinking, that's typical us Aussies. We'll just show up on the day and just see what happens. And but it was pretty cool. It's a nice way to get the feel for the marathon, I guess, the whole weekend. But we also headed off to the NBA straight after that. So, as a group, and I think that Friday night was just a really good night. It was the opening ceremony and then the Brooklyn Nets beat the Chicago Bulls. So we had a great night Friday night. But these two stars were part of the parade.
So how did that
Yeah.
happen?
So you just nominate if you want to be part of the Parade of Nations, is what they call the opening ceremony. And Tim and I, we put our name down and hadn't really thought too much about it. And then we got an email about a week or so ago saying, "Oh, you've been selected." And we're like, "Oh, yeah, cool." And we thought there'd be lots and lots of Aussies in there. And there was probably, maybe 30, Tim? Do you reckon?
Something like that. Yeah, 30 or 40 maybe at the most.
We were like, "Oh, cool." So they had a flag bearer and somebody had to hold the sign. So I got to hold the Australia sign to say that we're Australian. It was a lot of fun. There was the vibe in the corrals while we're waiting to go off because it went in alphabet. It's a bit like think of the Olympic opening ceremony where they do the names of each country in alphabetical order, and we're all sitting there. And obviously, who did we have in front of us, Tim, that were trying to make more noise than what we were?
Argentina.
So the Argentinians and the Australians were having a good lot of fun together.
Yeah, we'll sandwich between Argentina and Brazil. We'll sandwich between those guys. And Austria. Yeah. So there's Austria behind us and then Brazil sort of following them. But it was amazing. One of the things I found, it was amazing how many countries were represented at the event. And some of them only had one marching person, but I don't know, there would have been at least 100 and maybe 20, 130 countries represented at least.
It was just like marching in the Olympic ceremony, like opening ceremony for the Olympics. It was quite fun, actually. So, yeah, TV cameras and people cheering on the sides.
Yeah. A funny thing, Lucia, I went to video the Australians and I forgot to press the button. So all I got was the arse end of them as they were finishing up and the Brazilians were coming in. So,
yeah. But no, it was fantastic. It got a bit emotional, I think, when I crossed the line just from the noise, and you really felt like everyone was cheering me on or us on as a group. So it was pretty special.
And one thing that I love about that weekend, that no matter how many times you hear Frank Sinatra or the Jay-Z song, it doesn't get tiring at all. Even still hearing those songs now, if I'm in the car, it goes up because for me, those two songs bring back so many memories of that race. Now, this next question, I'm going to throw it to Team Ellis. So Tony's done his victory lap. I've decided New York is going to be my victory lap, hopefully in 2 years. If you guys had to do a victory lap, which one would it be and why?
New York. You can't beat the vibe. It was always going to be London because London was our first major. Now that we've done New York, though, I think it would have to be New York. Do you reckon, Tim?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd be happy with New York or London, but I think New York, it's just on another level again. It is by far the biggest as far as crowds go out of all the majors. It's the loudest. It's the biggest event. It set the world record this time for the most amount of finishes, 55,000 finishes. It is the biggest. It is the loudest, and there's something special about it. They're special. They're all special, and I don't like rating one better than the other, but I think New York is the one that you would have to go back to again. We'd have to do it again at some stage, Tara.
I think so. Yeah, and it's hard to say because Tony, you love New York, and I wasn't sure if that was because that was your first marathon and your first major. Lucia, it was your first major, not your first marathon, but it was your first major. And I thought maybe that's why I felt that way about London, because that was my first major. Love London, absolutely love London, but I think New York, it's, as Tim said, just a whole different level. So, yeah. What about you guys? You guys feel the same, or?
Yeah, I loved being there. What I did notice doing it the second time is you notice the hills a little bit more than when you've done it the first time, and you notice how long you run alongside Central Park before going into
Yes.
Central Park.
Hmm.
And because that was playing mind games with us, and it was, and I guess when I think back to the first time we ran it, it played mind games with me then. But you just seem to be running forever alongside Central Park, and
it's up a
especially,
hill as well.
yeah, and you're going up a hill, and and yeah, it was just loved every minute of the course. We had a challenging day, but it was still just so good to be back in New York running the marathon, and it was just the sense of getting across that finishing line was awesome. One thing I didn't enjoy is the long walk afterwards, and
Yeah.
and I know it's the only way logistically, but it's once again, you seem to, I think it's a 2-mile walk before you get out of the park or something. So that's a bit of a challenge. So, but yeah, if I was to, I'm glad I chose New York as the victory lap, because it was great to be there. It was great to be part of the Traveling Fit crew. It was a big Traveling Fit crew, which is another real positive reason to be doing New York as a victory lap, because I don't think there's ever going to be a shortage of spaces there that you can pick up through any of the sports travel companies. So, but yeah, I think New York, I might even go around again. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the length of Central Park, I probably didn't notice it, because I remember once we crossed over from the Bronx back into Manhattan in Harlem there, I looked at one of the street numbers, and it was 117th Street. And I'm thinking, we've got to go to 59th Street. That's another 60 blocks to go. And I'm looking at my watch going, we've got 5Ks or 6Ks to go at that point. And I'm like, don't think of it as blocks. If I start counting down every street, it's going to take forever. So I really deflected my mind off that to just focus on kilometers, because it seemed easier to measure it out in kilometers rather than counting down streets. I reckon it would do your head in if you go, okay, I've only got 62 streets or whatever to go till we turn right into the final 10.
Yeah.
And then you start counting them down. I reckon it would do your head in. But yeah, it was, that was a long stretch, and particularly with that hill on it, going up with Central Park on your right and that hill, it is a long way to go.
You know what else I
remember
really love about New York is they have a very generous cutoff, but the last finishers actually get chaired in. And they get given, like, the people that are cheering them on get given like these glow sticks, like big glow sticks, and they're waving and they're cheering.
There's beer at the finish line they had
Yes.
this year. So for the final finishes. So yeah, it's a shame we weren't able to get down there and really enjoy that spirit, I guess.
Yeah, a little tiring after running for 5 hours, 6 hours, but yeah, it was good. It was good to see that. And even I saw a video today actually where the race director gives every one of them, those last runners, a massive hug when they cross the finish line. And the last runner was a guy called Super Mario, who's done, I think they said 33
It was
New
something
York
ridiculous.
marathons.
Consecutive. Yeah.
And, and before, after he crossed the line and before they went in front of the cameras, the race director, Ted, whatever his name is, pulls out a wet wipe and actually wipes his face down and really makes sure he's looking really good afterwards without all the crusty, spitty stuff all over his face. And I thought that's a nice touch from the race director to go to that level to make sure that the last finisher is looking fresh and looking good for the TV cameras rather than, all messed up as we tend to look after doing all these races. Yeah.
And
Now,
before we sign off the New York segment, Luch, I just want to do a quick shout out to a good friend of the podcast, Reese. Last name is
Eberhard.
Yeah, Reese did an amazing thing there. It was his 40th marathon, I believe. And Sharon and I, when I'm ready to talk, I'll share a really funny story, but about Sharon and I on the New York Marathon. But when we passed Reese, I was having a quick chat. His knees were playing up, but he was still just forging ahead. But he picked up another runner there from the Traveling Fit group,
Carol,
yeah.
Kazza, Carol McKay.
And she was running the marathon in memory of, was it her mum or her? Anyway, there was a real emotional connection. But when Reese caught up with her, he sort of asked a question, "How you going?" And she said, "Oh, I'm not going real good." So Reese said, "We'll do it together." And he stayed with her the whole way. And then as they're coming into Central Park, she shared the reason why she was doing the marathon. And from what Reese was saying, there were tears all around. There were tears from him. There was tears from her. And but what a great job Reese did to get Kaz through that marathon, and what a great story. So well done.
Amazing
Yeah,
stuff.
so Lucia knows Reese. She's met him before as well. But for those that don't know Reese is also known as the running paparazzi or running pap. And you might see him out there in times around Brisbane or southeast Queensland taking photos as well of races. But absolutely amazing guy. I met Reese due to actually him helping me out with one of the races that I wasn't feeling well in as well. So he's a selfless, kind-hearted, amazing person. Yep, definitely love him. He's part of the family.
Well done, Reese. Now, guys, I'm just conscious of time. So just before we wrap up, I've got one last question. But sorry, Tony, this is for Team Alice. What does getting your 6-star medal mean to you?
It gives me my reason as to why I have been getting up at 4:30 or 3:30 or whatever time it is, depending on the heat. It gives me my reason as to when I've been told several times that I can't run anymore or that I shouldn't run. I've proven everybody else wrong. I've proven that I'm stronger than what anyone else thought I was. I've had the love and the support of Tim beside me the whole entire time. I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. But to me, having that medal around my neck is more than just a cumulative of the 6 races and that 6-star medal. It's a feeling of accomplishment within myself. It's me being able to do what others thought I couldn't do, and me showing everybody else that I'm tougher than what they think I am. So that is what it means to me.
Yeah,
Amazing.
for me, it's the recognition and the end of a challenge that we set ourselves a long time ago, a very difficult challenge. It's, I've said it many times before, life is not a dress rehearsal. You only get one shot at it. You don't know how long you've got in your life. So to set a challenge like this is a hard challenge. Running 6 marathons is hard. There's not many people on the planet who've run 6 marathons, let alone 6 major marathons. And to be able to say we've done 6 marathons, we've now done 18, but we've done 6 of the majors. We've put the training in, we've traveled, we've done all that, and we've done it together, and we've achieved that goal together. That's what is the special thing about it, is that, we could have just sat on our bums and not done anything. We could have done 1 marathon and ticked the box and said, yeah, we've done 1 marathon and moved on to something else. But we've stuck with something because it was something we both wanted to do and achieve. And it was a hard challenge that we set ourselves. And I get it now when people sit there and say, once they get their 6 stars, they get a bit lost, because it has been a challenge that goes for quite some time. And you're now thinking, well, what's the next difficult thing I'm going to do in my life? Yeah, I can run a marathon in 2 years' time in France or somewhere like that, or I can go and do Sydney and Cape Town and Shanghai. But is that the challenge now, or is there something else? And I guess that's the next thing for Team Alice now, is what's that next challenge? What do we do to keep ourselves motivated? And it's something we've all, I presume you and Tony, have had the same
Big time.
experiences and things that you've tried to work out what is next. I saw there is now a North Pole marathon, so maybe the next challenge is a pole to pole. You do South Pole, North Pole marathons, but there's
Even
that will cost the same as this alone, just doing 2 races. So I don't know, but yeah, it is representation of a lot of dedication, a lot of effort, and a lot of time put into something to get there. And I'm super proud of Tara and her efforts, because I know what she's been through health-wise and her body. I know how she went on Boston, and we only just scraped in there, as everyone knows. I saw her at her absolute worst in that race, and somehow she was able to pick herself up and keep going. And that's what this medal and this challenge does. It finds a way. You find a way to get through tough situations, and whether it's on the running track, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's with your family or friends, there's always you as a runner, and this validates that you can always find something positive and keep moving forward.
No, very well said. I just want to say very proud of you both, and I've been very lucky to run some of those majors with you, and to be part of your journey has just been absolutely amazing. So massive congrats to you guys. Massive.
Thank you very much, guys. And look, it's the same to you guys. It's the fact that we've seen you guys do what you've done, have your journey as well, that's inspired us. So having good people like you around us has helped inspire us to keep doing what we want to do as well. So now that we know how you guys felt, we always understood what it was like to get a 6-star medal, but when you actually get it, it's a different feeling to what you actually think it's going to be. So it's a very emotional point, and I respect you guys a lot for having done it, because there's challenges, as we all know, behind it. So yeah.
All right, thanks, Lucia, and very conscious of time. We have gone well over our hour this time, but without a run sheet. So well done, guys. Somehow we did that, and somehow we got the conversations going, which is absolutely awesome. One of the things that came through while we were away was talking to many of the people that are listening to the podcast, and even just over a quiet beer or something, coming up with some of the new episodes or potential episodes that people are actually wanting to hear about. So over the next couple of weeks, when we get back into some structure, we have got some great episodes coming through because of some of that feedback and comments that we've had with some of those people that we really appreciate that take time to listen to the podcast. In fact, one of the ladies, and I won't mention her name because I know she'll be embarrassed, sort of talked a little bit about she feels like a groupie at times. And I had to have a little bit of a laugh at that one, because we are just very ordinary, average, everyday runners who just enjoy bringing you talking about running, and then hopefully giving you some hints and tips on what you can do. So let's just do a quick summary of, as always, we love recording these podcasts. A big thank you to all of our marathon mates. I know that today was my first day back in Brisbane. I know Tim and Tara have only been back a day or so as well. So it's been awesome that we were able to get together. There is a jam full of content coming out this week. There was a podcast. We're recording this on the Monday night. I released a episode today for the Facebook Lives that Tim and Tara had done in New York. This one will come out on the Tuesday. And then, of course, we've got Out and Back coming out on Wednesday, and then another pre-record session on Friday. And then we'll be back into some sort of a groove coming into next week. So big shout out to Marathon Mates. As always, we love recording these episodes for you. We love getting your feedback, and in the case of what we've just been through, being able to sit down with a lot of people and just have a chat around what it is that they really enjoy and some of their ideas. But send them through on Messenger or Facebook or however, or send it to us on our email address at happyrunning@flyingrunner.com. As usual, video of this episode's available on Spotify, YouTube, Audio is on every major podcast platform that there is. Remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we're going to catch you on the very next episode of the Flying Runner podcast. Until then, happy running.
Happy
Happy
running.
running.
Thanks, guys. Great to catch up.
Thanks, guys.